In this video, I'm going to show you how to keg and quick carbonate homemade beer or cider. By the way, this is our brand new version 2.0 keg. It is back in stock. We're going to be giving away one of these kegs, so watch the entire video to figure out how you can win one. Prerequisite for this is that the beer is done fermenting and you've cold crashed it. So you put the fermenter in some sort of cold storage to basically force everything to drop out of suspension. It also needs to be cold for carbonating, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So before I open this beer up and take a look at it, because you want to minimize the exposure of this beer to the ambient environment, I am going to basically get everything set up. So I've already cleaned and I've sanitized my keg. You can learn more about that in 2 other videos that we have publishing at a later date. And then you just need all of your gear you're going to use. It needs to be cleaned and sanitized as well. You'll notice that the sanitizer, it's quite bubbly, especially when you're like splashing it around. That's fine. It's not gonna hurt anything. This is non-toxic and it's no rinse. So whatever touches this in 30 seconds, it will be sanitized for the purpose that we need. And then also all you need to do is, just drain it out. Don't rinse it with water, because it doesn't need it. Actually, before I get started, I just want to mention this. Our kegs version 2.0 are now back in stock. One very important difference between our new kegs and the V1 kegs is that the thermal well is now in the actual keg body. We decided to remove this from the lid. This makes the lid kind of bulky and awkward. This isn't our new lid, this is the old lid, but the new lids for the 2.0 kegs, they don't have the thermal well on them anymore. Pro tip, these buckets are a lot easier to open when they're on the ground. Oh yeah. So we have our beer opened up. Ooh, it smells really good. First thing I'm gonna do is take a final gravity reading. You would do this for 2 reasons. Number 1, to make sure that fermentation is complete. I'm fairly confident that fermentation is in fact complete. So really what I'm just wanting to do is measure the gravity for the purpose of finding out the ABV of this beer, how much alcohol is in it. I'm just gonna set this aside and later today I'll take the final gravity reading. So transferring the beer from your fermenter into a keg is actually quite easy. As long as you do a couple things, like I said, star sand, bubbles, not harmful, it's totally fine. The most important step when transferring beer is to not splash it around. You don't want to be aerating this at all. That will cause oxidation, which will cause the beer to just go bad and taste like wet cardboard. You don't want that. Pop your hose down into the keg. You want to make sure the hose makes it all the way down to the very bottom. You would never want to like pour the beer into the keg because you don't want to splash it around. You want to siphon it. You don't want it dribbling in there. You want it to be filling basically from the bottom up. And then the other thing you need for the siphon to work is your beer, whatever you're transferring, needs to be higher than whatever you're transferring into. So gravity actually does this job and transfers everything over. And I guess my last pro tip is this, which actually should have been my first pro tip. Don't agitate this thing. You cold crash it to get everything to drop down to the bottom. There's a bunch of yeast at the bottom. You don't want any of that in your keg. You want everything to be as settled out as possible. If you shake this thing around or stir it up at all, you're gonna make this thing really cloudy and you're gonna have to cold crash it again. So just be very careful with your beer. We're gonna pop our auto siphon down in, pull it up a couple times, make sure there are no air bubbles in the line, and then we're just gonna start the transfer process. Pretty easy. Looks like we had about 5 1/4, 5 1/2 gallons in here, so I'm happy with that. That's generally what you're shooting for. Your fermenter volume is always gonna be higher than your keg volume because we're gonna leave a fair amount of this behind. And I guess while it's transferring here, I'll just say this. Another pro tip is to not be greedy when you're transferring your beer over. It's much better to leave a bunch of sludge at the bottom than to try and squeeze one more pint out of this into here and then transfer a bunch of dead yeast and hop debris with it. So this is a bit of a weird beer that we're transferring here. It actually has an entire nylon bag of coconut in it, which we added to the fermenter. You're normally not gonna have something like this in your fermenter. So I guess this is gonna make the process a little weird. So at this point, the number one thing you don't wanna do is drop the siphon down into the yeast, and you don't wanna lose your siphon. If you lose your siphon, sometimes it can be a little precarious getting it started back again. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to avoid transferring some of the yeast over from this batch. I'll show you my workaround for that. I just said don't be greedy, but I'm gonna be a little greedy. And I just did what I told you not to do. Twice over. All right, yeah, we're done. You know what, I did a pretty good job. There's really not a whole lot of liquid in there. The most important is that we had a lot of hop debris in here. You definitely don't want to transfer that over. Yeah, check this thing out. Pretty gross. We did lose a lot of liquid here, but it looks like it kind of soaked up a lot of liquid. I know, it is what it is for a beer like this. All right, so I'm gonna put that over here. But let's just look down in here. You know, I ended up with some liquid here that didn't get transferred over, and then we have a lot of this stuff that's left behind. I mean, look how thick that layer of goop is. Dead yeast. I mean, some of it's actually still active. You know, we could technically even like throw another beer on top of here and it would start fermenting and like actually make beer. Oh my gosh, look at that. This is what you want to avoid transferring over into your keg. Nobody wants to drink this, trust me. So we'll put it back together. Like I said, ignore this tube here. That's not part of our 2.0 kegs, which we have now. These are modular kegs. You can set them up in a variety of different ways using different accessories and whatnot. For this particular setup, I'm going pretty basic. I have a regular dip tube in here, standard dip tube that runs all the way down to the bottom of the keg. I have this floating dip tube, and we have two different styles of these. This is kind of like the lower tech version. It looks a little discolored. Ignore that. This is 100% clean and sanitized. Just been used a lot. I transferred a little bit more of the debris over than I wanted to, but it's gonna be okay because of that floating dip tube. We'll end up with some debris on the bottom of the keg, but the cool thing about that floating dip tube is that it just follows the liquid level all the way down. So it's always gonna be pulling the clearest, cleanest beer from the top. I'm gonna pop that on there, put my tri-clamp on here. You don't need gloves for this, but I'm wearing them. So I'm just putting a cap on this. I am hot and only getting hotter. Oh God, got hair all over me. I love my cats, but guys, come on. Okay, well, just ignore what my shirt looks like. All right, so on the keg, we have several fittings here. This here, let's start over here, liquid post. You can tell it's liquid because it does not have a notch in the side. So there's a dip tube that runs all the way down. This is where beer can come out. This one is another liquid post. This is where the floating dip tube is. Beer can come out of there. On this side, we have the gas post. So this is where the gas will go into carbonate, which is what we're going to do now. So you need a CO2 tank, a keg full of chilled beer. This will not work if the beer is warm. This is not necessary, but I'll just show you, especially if you're new to using our type of keg. You wanna make sure everything is sealed up tightly. That includes all of the fittings, plus the two tri-clamps and the thermal well as well. Once you have some pressure on it, we're set the serving pressure here. Just hit it with a little bit of Star Sand, which will bubble up if there is a leak. If there are any leaks, you'll just see bubbles actually forming in real time, which I see none. We're good. So next step, we're going to quick carb this because I want to drink it now. To do that, we're gonna crank the pressure up to 40 PSI, which is the pressure limit for the kegs. Hey Siri, set a timer for 4 minutes. We're on good terms today. So, what I'm gonna do, this is gonna be noisy, I apologize, is I'll just shake the keg gently, rock it back and forth like this for 4 minutes under pressure. It's kind of like I'm exercising here. I think they call this exercise kegels. Kegels, the keg, you're rocking the keg, kegels? Somebody tell me in the comments. And we're done. So I'm gonna turn this pressure down now, quite a bit, and then I'm gonna release this pressure slowly. So I'm gonna use the floating dip tube here. I have a tap. You could also put this on a kegerator or whatever you want, but picnic tap will be good for this process here. So I've released the pressure down to about 10 PSI, right? Pour a little bit of this in here. Let's just kind of clear my line out. So This is the fun part. You get to test to see if you've carbonated it properly. So this is, I don't want to spoil anything, but this is kind of like a hazy IPA. It smells incredible. Taste, dude. So freaking good. In all honesty, it could use a little bit more carbonation. It's drinkable as it is, but it's just a little low. Instead of trying to force carb it more, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna set this regulator to serving pressure, so like 10 to 12 PSI, and then it will build all the way up to the carbonation level it needs over the next few days. We've gotten it most of the way there. If you wanted to drink it right away, have it perfectly carb, you could do this process again, but I'm just gonna cut it off here. To win this keg, here's what you have to do. We are gonna pick a comment at random from this video. Comment below and tell us your favorite part about home brewing. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll pick a winner May 1st. We'll message you, let you know you won, and we'll send you a keg, and then we'll announce it in another video.